this is my art channel, and today we're going to be doing something kind of dangerous because we are going to be working with fire. That's right, we're going to be working with fire, which again, kind of dangerous, so I'm going to take some safety precautions to have some water and salt on hand because again, we're going to be burning things for art. So yeah, be careful with this one. I definitely say that some of the crafts in this video, especially the ones involving the fire, are more suitable for like more experienced crafters who kind of know what they're doing. And if you get a little nervous around fire, which I did too, I'd have like a parent or guardian or someone else just kind of supervise you while you do this because again, it's quite dangerous. But anyways, we are going to be doing various things with plastic spoons today, which means again, we will be setting some of them on fire because a little while ago there was this craft that a lot of people were really into. It was kind of like melting plastic spoons to make these little flowers. And honestly, I thought those were so cute, but I've never tried to make one before, so today we're going to be doing that. But don't worry, that's not the only thing we're going to be doing today because we're going to be exploring a ton of different cool things you can make with plastic spoons. So are you ready? Let's get into it. Alright, so here we go. As you can see, I'm not wearing my nails or bracelets, and I don't even have a paper in the background, and that's because we don't want any extra things that could get caught by the fire. And for fire, we're going to be using this candle, which is honestly pretty cool. It has a lid, which is nice, and it actually smells really good, which is kind of just like a nice little bonus. And I do actually have this other candle, which is so pretty, and I love it so much, but I don't necessarily really want to ruin it by using it. Like, I kind of bought it for more decorative purposes and just kind of want to have it sitting on somewhere, so I'm just gonna, yeah. Anyways, now that we've decided that this is the one we're gonna use, let's get things lit up. But wait, actually, why don't I explain things just a little bit better? So what we're gonna be doing is taking these plastic spoons, lighting the candle, and then kind of holding them over the flame so that they kind of make cool shapes and kind of warp a little bit so that they turn into almost petal shapes. So because we're gonna be using fire, we're gonna need some water and salt nearby just in case things go a little bit awry. Because again, water can put out fire and the salt can remove the oxygen. And I'm just gonna kind of push those into the corner so they're not really taking up space but still nearby in case something does happen. And now that we've taken our safety precautions, let's actually light it up. Now, I actually got my dad to, light up the candle because again, I don't have an intense fear of fire, but I understand that it can be dangerous and that you need to be careful around it. So I thought it was better for him to do it because he has more life experience than me. So that probably means that he'd know how to kind of like handle a situation like this better and stuff, and honestly I'm just kind of frankly scared of the lighter if I'm being honest. And yeah, I'm aware that that's kind of pathetic, but don't worry about it. Okay, anyways, now that that's lit up, let's just kind of move it out of the way and get out some of our plastic spoons. And when I tell you I have a lot of plastic spoons, trust me, I mean it. I mean, just look at all of this, there is so many. But that's actually mostly because I couldn't find packs of just spoons, so I also have forks and knives and stuff, which I'm sure I can use for other crafts. But anyways, let's open up these white spoons and try these ones out because I don't want to waste all the pretty colored spoons, so why don't we test with these ones first. And you can see here that I put the spoon too close to the flame, which honestly just resulted in the spoon being burnt, which really sucked, but I tried it again and again and just trying to hold it farther away from the flame, but the shape wasn't changing at all. In the end, I decided to blow out the candle and just kind of strategize and think about what I wanted to do and what I was maybe doing wrong, because as you can see, the spoon was just burnt and the shape did not change. And after some thinking, I was finally ready to light up the candle again. And of course, I got my dad to do it again. But I figured out that maybe it was best to try and light up the sides of the spoon instead to get those to curve in rather than the center like I was doing earlier. So I tried that quite a few times, but all that really happened is that I burnt the edges, or it just wasn't really morphing in the way that I wanted it to. Because I'd seen so many videos and examples online of the spoons just kind of naturally kind of bending when you put them over the flame. But mine weren't doing that, and I was so confused as of why they weren't. So I continued to try this. I tried even pushing them against the edges, kind of like artificially making those curves that I wanted, but it still looked a little awkward with kind of the burn marks. Some of them were able to rub off, but some of them were so strong that I wasn't able to do anything about them. All in all, after lots of trial and error, I still hadn't figured out how to properly do what I wanted to. Also, don't worry too much if you saw the spoon catch on fire a few times. I got so frustrated that I was pretty much just willingly setting things on fire at this point, but don't worry, if that happens, just blow them out. But also, try not to set them on fire because the fumes were horrible. And let me tell you, I did not want to give up. I tried absolutely everything and anything I could think of, but still, nothing seemed to work. Even if I tried this or that, it never really made a difference. But still, I was persistent. I was determined to figure this out and try and get it to work, no matter what I had to do. And unfortunately, after all of that hard work and all of that experimenting, it just did not work. Unfortunately, after a while, I did have to give up and just kind of realize that maybe it wasn't me doing something wrong, maybe I just didn't have the right material. So I blew out the candle and took a look at what I made. And honestly, they weren't that bad. They definitely didn't look like what I expected them or wanted them to. But again, I think maybe the problem was that the spoons were too thin. And if the plastic spoons that I was using now were too thick, then the other ones I had would definitely be too thick because they were much thicker than the ones I was using currently. This meant I had to completely pivot from my original idea of using plastic spoons and use something with a thinner plastic, which was plastic bottles. And luckily, I have a ton of art supplies just kind of everywhere. I kind of collect them, which isn't really great, but it comes in handy in situations like this where I just need a random material. And luckily, I had 2 of the clear and 1 of the green, which would be the perfect amount to make the flowers and leaves. So let's cut these up. And yes, I did do this off camera because it would have been really awkward to kind of show you what I was doing because I ended up having to stab the plastic bottles that I could get my scissors through, and it was just really awkward to cut. But it's not really that complicated. You just kind of want to cut the plastic bottle into almost like little leaf and petal shapes, and I'll show you a closer look in just a minute, but let's kind of get that plastic bag out of here so that we have some more space. So let's just get rid of that, and now I will show you a closer look. It's much easier to see on camera with the green, so again, you just kind of want to cut like little curvy petal shapes. It's kind of hard to describe, but it's kind of almost like the middle of an archway, if that makes sense. Just kind of like what a petal would look like. And you don't need them to be super curvy because again, the flame will do that for us. And it's important to not use the pieces where the label were because again, those will have gunk on them and pieces of other things, which could cause like some unwanted chemical reactions. So yeah, we're not gonna wanna use those, and unfortunately, we will have to throw them out. Anyways, let's get things kind of cleaned up, like move some of the extra spoons and the pieces and just get them all organized so that we have more open space so that we don't accidentally cause more fire than we want to, you know? Because like with more clutter, things could catch on fire and that would be really bad. So yeah, let's just get our space nice and clean, make sure we have our water in it and salt and everything, and kind of finish cleaning things up because again, we're working with fire and that can be pretty dangerous. So we want to make sure that we're kind of setting ourselves up for success while also being safe. And now I'm going to sort the pieces of plastic because I want the clear ones to be the petals and then the green ones to be the leaves. So I'm just going to go ahead and sort those. And now that that is all done, it is time to light the candle again. And again, yes, I got my dad to do this, okay? I'm scared of the lighter. Don't worry about it. Also, let's just ignore the fact that my lighter was struggling and that it would not light the second wick, but that's fine. I seem to be okay. Like, again, the plastic is thinner, so it probably doesn't need as much heat to curl. And that's exactly what happened. Straight as I put the plastic over top of the flame, it started to warp just like I saw and was hoping it would. So, moral of the story is to use thinner plastic. Clear plastic is normally best. Also, because the plastic is thinner, it gets a lot hotter than the plastic spoons. Like the plastic spoons got hot, but this stuff is a lot worse, so be careful. You can see me touching it directly and then pulling my finger back, and that is because it's hot. Be careful. Also, I wasn't putting these directly on the table once they were done. I kind of put them in the candle lid holder, just because I didn't want them to like, I don't know, I'm being kind of paranoid, but I didn't want them to set the table on fire or anything. I just wanted them to have like a proper place to cool. But anyways, the technique that seemed to work the best for this was kind of putting the piece of the plastic that you wanted to curl right over the flame. You didn't need it to go on the side or anything, just directly over the flame and then it would curl. But again, you want to kind of do the outer sides of the petal, like kind of along the edges and not too many spots. I think per petal, I would kind of have like maybe 3 to 5 places that I would put the flame underneath the plastic. I don't know if that fully makes sense, but basically, if you do try this, you'll kind of have to find your own kind of technique and groove, but just kind of like, again, be careful. Again, it's not too difficult. These do melt pretty fast because the plastic is thin, so it's more just kind of controlling it and learning when to rotate it and what places to kind of melt it. But the thing about this craft is there's not really a way to kind of do it wrong because petals are nature and imperfect, and that's what makes them so pretty. The fact that they are kind of messy but beautiful in their own way. So again, play around with it, but again, make sure to be cautious and eventually you'll get it to work. But now that I had mine working and I kind of had a technique figured out for myself, all I needed to do was continue to keep just kind of melting the petals, putting them to cool, and then once my tray got filled up, I needed to kind of pour them out so that I could store more while they were cooling, and then just keep repeating that and melting them all until they were all done. And once they were all done, they looked like this. And honestly, I think they look so pretty. Like, they almost look like glass, and it's just beautiful. I can definitely see why people used to be like really obsessed with this craft and why lots of people thought it was cool. But anyways, now that we have our beautiful petals and leaves, what we're gonna want to do is get out the hot glue gun, because yes, you could technically just melt the plastic and then kind of attach them together. But again, I'm kind of nervous with fire, and I'm much more comfortable with using hot glue because I've used it so many times before. So I just feel like this would be a better fit for me. Also, yes, you are seeing this right. I am taking back the spoons that some people would probably argue are trash, and I'm taking some of the cooler looking ones and we're gonna turn them into a flower. Because I'm all about reusing things and not wasting as much and trying to like repurpose things. Like, even when I sew, I try and use all the extra scraps of fabric or kind of put them in a bag so that I can use them later on. So now that I've picked out some of the cooler looking spoons, I'm gonna put the other ones to the side so that I can use them later on for who knows what. But again, it's nice to have some random stuff on hand. But yeah, let's get into prepping our spoons for the gluing, because we are going to have to cut the stems off because we want to make a flower. Now, again, plastic is thick, kind of hard to cut, but I did manage to get through with quite a bit of struggling, but eventually I got them all off. Or almost completely all off, because I did kind of get distracted because I wanted to show you guys that I am keeping the extra scraps of the bottles. I have the more little scraps in a little container, and then the kind of tops and bottoms of the bottles just kind of sitting there. So yeah, no, I will be keeping those for other projects. Again, I'm not entirely sure what I'll do with them, but I'm sure they'll come in handy. But oh, look at that. We already have all of the petals or plastic spoon pieces ready to turn into a flower. And I kind of want to use one of my original ideas for this, which is to use part of the plastic fork as kind of like the center, or almost like little pieces with pollen in the flower. So what I'm going to do is try and kind of cut this fork, but this plastic is even thicker than the other plastic, so I ended up having to use an actual knife to cut it, which I did off camera because it took quite a bit of effort. But it was worth it, because in the end I will be able to see one of my ideas come true. Now I'm just going to kind of bend these so that they kind of go opposite ways, and I'm probably only going to need 3 of these instead of 4, because when you see flowers, they normally have like 3 little sticks with pollen instead of 4. Sometimes they have 5, it depends on the flower, but I felt like 3 would work for this one. And now all that was left to do was to start gluing the pieces of the petals together to create the flower, and I wasted no time with that because I was really excited to see how it would look like once it was all done. I will say I got a little too excited and didn't let my hot glue gun heat up for the right amount of time, so it was kind of difficult to get the flower petals together because, again, the glue wasn't hot enough, so they just wouldn't stick. So in the meantime, I decided to kind of just organize pieces, kind of figure out and kind of plan out what I wanted to do with some of the flowers, how would they look, which pieces would I be using, and just stuff like that until the hot glue gun was nice and ready. And then I just kind of went around gluing the petals together and kind of just adjusting them until I was happy with them, especially for the parts that were actually made from the plastic spoons. They were much more thicker again, so they were kind of more awkward to glue. However, I did get that nice and done, so then I moved on to the petals that we made out of the plastic bottles. And now these ones were really weird shapes, so it was kind of weird to try and find where to put the glue and how to get them, like find the contact points. It was definitely an experience, but luckily after some fiddling, this is what things were looking like, and honestly, they were looking so pretty, and I was honestly pretty happy with them. So while the glue was drying, I just kind of did some reorganization, as you can see, and after that I went back to hot gluing. However, it did take me a little bit of fiddling to just kind of figure out where I wanted to put some of the pieces and stuff, especially because the plastic spoons are a lot thicker. It was just kind of awkward to kind of layer them on top of each other, but luckily after a little bit I kind of figured out how I wanted to arrange them, so I just kind of set them like that, let them dry, and while I was waiting for it to dry, I took the other piece and it was looking a little awkward, so I thought I might trim a little bit of it off just to make things fit a little bit nicer. So that's exactly what I did, and then I went ahead and glued it on, and after fiddling with that for a little bit, just making sure it was in the right position, I decided to start trying to glue on some of the pistils because it was about time to try and finish this flower up. Obviously, I could have been working on some of the other ones at the same time, but I was just kind of getting really excited now that this flower was almost done, and I just kind of wanted to finish up the vision, and honestly, I am so happy with the way it turned out. Like, look at this. It is so pretty. And yes, I did add some gold paint to just kind of fancy it up and give it a more finished look, and also to kind of hide some of the hot glue. And all in all, I'm pretty happy with it. Obviously, it's not perfect, but considering we turned something that most people would consider trash into treasure, and especially something that looks this pretty, I am very happy with it. Now let's focus on the other flower, why don't we? So here's what I was kind of thinking. As you can see, I kind of sorted the piles, but don't worry about that. Anyways, I was kind of thinking maybe this petal could go right there, or maybe over there. I think it fits better here though, because it's quite a bit of a bigger petal, and then I was thinking maybe that one could squeeze in there. But anyways, we gotta wait for the hot glue gun to heat up, so why don't we make another little pile of petals that we could use for another flower? Because I have these ones which are also kind of a bit longer, so I feel like they kind of just fit together and could make a nice little other flower, and then those other petals we'll use for something else. But yeah, let's just glue those on. So that's pretty much all I did from now on, just gluing the petals in place, adjusting them to make sure they actually fit, and just stuff like that. But again, now that the petals were all ready, it was just repeating of gluing, placing, holding it there until it was dry, waiting for it to dry, gluing the next petal, and then the next petal, and then also sometimes I was planning while I was gluing the petals. But yeah, no, it was very much just repetition, but all in all, it was kind of fun because it was almost like putting together a puzzle, but you didn't know what it would turn out to be, if that makes any sense. But some of the pieces of petals had kind of awkward points, which were kind of hard to get the glue on, but I somehow managed. Like, they just didn't have nice flat surfaces that I could easily push onto the other flowers, but luckily I still made it through. Then while I was waiting for that to dry, I started on the other flower, just gluing two of the pieces, and then also starting to kind of plan out how I wanted it to look. But I realized I probably shouldn't start a whole nother flower if I haven't even finished the other one yet, so I just kind of pushed that to the side and started to really focus on finishing that other flower, especially because I wanted to use some of the nice smaller and rounder pieces in the center to kind of make it look like it had more depth and dimension, and also to kind of cover up some of the hot glue stains. And let me just say, after all of the hot glue stains and just the little globs of hot glue that were visible, I can definitely understand why some people would just melt the edges and then put them together like that, because honestly, it does look pretty messy, and you will see that I kind of try and hide that later on. But all in all, I still do think it looks really pretty regardless of the hot glue. And also, especially because this was my first time doing this craft and I'm not so used to working with fire, I think it turned out pretty well. Because honestly, look at that. It is pretty, and yes, you can still see the hot glue, but I think it just looks stunning, especially because most people would just recycle or throw out those plastic bottles, but I found a whole new use for it. But I guess it's not really new because people have done this before. But anyways, let's go ahead and get some nice little leaf pieces for this flower to make it look even more like a flower. And I'm just gonna bend that piece a little bit so that it kind of fits a bit better. And I think what I want to do is glue these two pieces together so that they're not so spread out when I glue them to the flower, and just also to make it a bit more secure. So now that that is done, let's just go ahead and make sure we are actually happy with kind of like our arrangement of the petals, and make sure we don't want to try any of the other types or anything like that. And then let's go ahead and glue that straight onto the flower. And I'm just gonna kind of hold that in place just to make sure it kind of sits the right way and stuff like that. So there we go. That looks pretty good. I'm actually really happy with it. So let's go focus on our other flowers. So I'm just gonna do pretty much the same thing I was doing before, kind of putting glue on the petals and then arranging them how I like. Again, these ones are pretty awkward shapes, so they're gonna be kind of difficult to glue together, but again, just do your best, do what you can with these, and if you need to trim the ends of them, feel free. I did that before a few times and it did work, but for this one, I think I'm just gonna leave it like that. And let's clean up our area a little bit because it's getting quite messy. And you know what? I'm thinking I actually maybe want to add something to this flower. Like maybe we could add this part of the gold spoon like I wanted to originally. That's actually pretty big, so why don't we trim that down a little bit, and let's just kind of like do some trial and error to see if we can get this to kind of be the right size. Maybe that'll work. It still looks maybe a bit clunky, so let's trim that down some more, because again, I could easily leave the flower how it was, but this was kind of like one of my original ideas when doing this craft, to add some of the gold spoons in the middle. So I'm just gonna kind of put that on there, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and clean our area up again. And you know what? I'm actually having second thoughts about the little circle in the middle. I feel like it makes it look less elegant and more kind of kid-like. It reminds me kind of those like simple flowers you'd see at like for kids, I don't know. But anyways, let's get that off of there and try and get some of the excess hot glue out because we don't need that anymore. And let's try and find a different solution that we can still kind of hide the hot glue, but also still kind of give it an accent, but not something that doesn't really complement the flower and give it a different style. You know, maybe just adjusting it will be fine. Maybe I can use this piece or something. Or I can use maybe this piece. No, I don't know what I'm gonna do, honestly. Let me fiddle around with it for a second. The biggest problem I'm facing is the hot glue stains are pretty big, and I can't really put something to cover that because then it covers too much of the flower, so I need something to kind of complement it or distract from it, so probably a smaller piece. And you know what? That actually kind of works. Maybe we could position it like that. Ooh, okay, I kind of like that, but let's trim it down a little bit just so that it's like a little less overwhelming. And oh, actually that looks kind of cool. I know it's hard to see right now, but look at that. That's not bad. I think we will go ahead and hot glue that in place because you know what? Honestly, I feel like just because it's like a smaller piece, it's kind of like has a sharper edge. It kind of complements the round edges of the flower. So I think I like that quite a bit better than just the circular piece. And you know what? Let's just adjust that in there a little bit better and voila. Now, I have to say, this definitely isn't perfect, but I definitely am happy with it. And you know what? Maybe the hot glue stains aren't so bad after all. So let's go ahead and clean this up and then get ready to finish some of the other flowers. Now, you can see that I am saving all the scraps, and that's because, again, you never know when those will come in handy. And yes, I am a bit of a hoarder of art supplies, but again, you never know when you'll need it. And plus, I would rather keep it and use it eventually than throw it out. But anyways, look at that. This flower is almost done. And honestly, it looks a little funky because I was just using like some of the random other petals I had, but honestly, I think it looks okay. And maybe we could put these three pieces just kind of in the middle for like the other one that we did. Let me just rearrange those a bit. I don't know, I don't love that, but you know what I could do is I could turn these petals into their own kind of flower by just adding a few more petals kind of like that. And honestly, I think that looks pretty cool. Now, obviously, it's gonna take me a little bit to get them into that position, but I'm just gonna start by, again, gluing two pieces of the petals together and just kind of making them more of like a tulip shape rather than a flatter flower this time. And then I'm just gonna try and keep them in that position to make something just kind of a little bit more different than what we've been doing. And not only was the shape and kind of the way it looked different, but the process of making it was also a bit different just because I couldn't really set it down to sit by itself to dry because the hot glue needed a little bit to dry and I kind of had to hold it in shape or else it might fall apart while I was letting it dry. So I will say it was quite a bit more annoying to make, especially because it was just such a weird angle to kind of glue the pieces together, but I will say it was worth it because, not to spoil anything, but this flower did end up being my favorite. And also, the other two flowers we made are also really pretty, even if they weren't my favorite. And honestly, I'm just so excited. I love the ways these are looking, and they're not even done yet. So why don't we focus a little bit more on that flower? Because I was thinking maybe we could add some leaves to it, kind of like these ones, the smaller ones, instead of the longer ones that we gave the other one. Because again, we have lots of different shapes of leaves, and I kind of just want to experiment. And also, just because this flower is like smaller and a little bit less elegant than the other one, I think it would be fun to kind of experiment with these kind of shorter leaves. Also, I just think it would look cool, and I made these anyway, so let's give it a try. And honestly, I think that looks pretty good. I'm just kind of fiddling with the position of the second leaf because once you glue it, you can't really move it, so I think just right about there is good. But I also kind of like it better just over here on this side, and I mean, there is kind of like a weird contact point for it, and it's gonna be kind of difficult. But maybe if I just sit it down and put it away for now so that we can focus on this other flower, it'll be fine. So now that we're going to be focusing on this one, we have 3 other petals. So I think I'm just gonna kind of put them in between the other 3 and then just kind of glue them on. So the glue was already warm from that one, which is why it just kind of stuck on. But honestly, I think I like it like that. And then let's just add the next one, and then we're just gonna continue in a bit of a circle until we've used all of the petals. And honestly, I don't mind the way it looks right now, but I kind of want the petals to be a bit more spread out. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do right now. Just kind of gently adjust them and push them so that they're a bit more spread out, just like that. And then I'm pretty happy with it like that, but why don't we maybe go ahead and add, you know, maybe some leaves or something. And you can see that piece is kind of falling there, so I'm just gonna use that flower there to help that stand up. And then I'm thinking maybe the longer leaves would maybe look a bit nicer. maybe kind of on the side like that. I think that could probably look cool, so let's try that. And you know what? I think we're gonna have to let that dry for a little bit, and while we do that, we do have all these other leaves we could use, which I'll probably keep for something else. And then there is this extra petal, which I did not notice, which maybe I could put in the middle like that to give it some more depth. And you know what? I actually kind of like that. So let's go ahead and put some glue in there and then just kind of gently press that in there and then just leave it to sit. But if we take a look at this flower, it does look quite a bit like, I don't know, it looks messy. You can see the hot glue stains. It doesn't look the best, but you know what? I think I have just the thing for that. And yes, we're gonna be trying to use some gold spoons again because I really just want this to work. Again, I want to stay true to kind of like the original idea of maybe using these for some of the centerpieces. So I'm gonna do exactly that. So we're just gonna give these a quick trim so that they kind of look more like ovals instead of like chopped off spoon pieces, if that makes any sense. And now that we're done with those, we are just going to go ahead and try and glue these on into the center of the flower and see how that looks. But you know what, already I can kind of tell that these are looking maybe a little bit too big for the flower, but you know what, maybe it'll look better once we add the other one. So let's just go ahead, see how it looks, and oh no, that does not look good. Yeah, no, those are way too big and definitely have the same problem as before, just them being too big and not really complementing the flower in the right way. So you know what, I think I'm going to rip those off for now. But you know what? Maybe flipping it over like that looks good. Actually, wait, that kind of does. Let me go get something real quick. So this is the piece that we tried to use earlier on the other flower, but it didn't quite fit on that one. But it actually looks really good on this one, I think. So let's glue that in place. Because the thing about this flower is it doesn't have the pointy leaf, so it doesn't need kind of like a pointy middle. It has the rounder leaves, so the whole kind of point of it is to be round. So I feel like that kind of works. And the bigger one is definitely way too big for this flower. So let's just leave it as is for now. Once again, this flower definitely isn't perfect. There are some little hot glue stains, which I'm gonna just try and pick off right now, just some of the excess strings that aren't really necessary and are just kind of like awkwardly there. And then I'm gonna go put that to the side so that we can focus on the other flower. And now that you can see that I have secured the leaves, let's work on something else for now. And what I'm trying to do is the exact thing I've been trying to do this entire time. Use the gold spoon pieces kind of as a centerpiece for the flowers. And you know what? I think it actually worked for this one, but it'll be easier to tell if it looks good once I've secured them together. So let's go ahead and do that. So now what we're gonna do is add some more hot glue onto the ends, and we're just gonna kind of press the spoons together. And since the hot glue is still warm and takes a little bit to dry, I am just gonna have like a little bit more mobility, and I'm gonna be able to kind of position them how I like. So you can see I kind of pressed them together while the hot glue was kind of curing still, but it is still somewhat warm and not fully dried, which means I can kind of spread them out and position them a little bit while they're inside the flower. So now that we have glued those in place, we're just gonna have to leave those to dry. But honestly, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. And honestly, I think this one is definitely my favorite of all the flowers, because if you look at all of them, they are all so stunning. And honestly, I'm so happy with how each of these turned out. Like, they're all so unique and they just look so beautiful. But anyways, let's move on to our next craft now that we've taken a look at those. So for this craft, we are going to be using green spoons, and that's because I want to make a little something to go on my bulletin board. And I want it to be clovers, because not only can we make flowers out of plastic spoons, we could probably make little clovers, something like that. So let's try to glue those together. And then what I'm kind of thinking is once we just glue those in the right position, we're just gonna take kind of one of those little push pins and glue those onto the back of those. And then I'll be able to display them on my bulletin board, because I like to have little mementos of each video so that when I look at my bulletin board, we can kind of see what I've done over time on my channel. And also in the start of videos, when I have my bulletin board in the background, you can kind of see what my channel is as a whole. And what a better way to do that than to make little me's, aka little clovers, to go on the board. Because not only does that kind of represent that we are using plastic spoons in today's craft, but it also kind of represents me, because my name's Clover. So I thought that would just be a cool little thing that we could do, and that's exactly what we're doing now. So again, there's nothing really much you have to do for this, but I would say it is definitely easier to start with your plastic spoons already cut, especially if your plastic spoons are kind of thick like mine. What you want to do is just separate the head of the spoon from kind of like the little stem, and then what you're going to do is just kind of glue them in the shape of a clover, just like that. And you are going to have to let them dry every once in a while, and it is kind of just a tedious process of just kind of repeating adding the glue and then holding them in place and kind of positioning them and adjusting how they look. But once you're done, they should look something like this. And don't worry, we will be keeping all of the extra little bits of plastic spoons for something else. I don't know what exactly I'm going to do, but again, we'll keep them just in case. Now we're just going to
glue on the push pins, and be very careful not to get any hot glue onto your hands because that stuff burns. So again, just put a little bit of hot glue onto the end of the push pin just like that and stick it right where you want it on your Clover, and then voila, just like that, they are nice and done and ready to put on the bulletin board. I do have to say they definitely don't look the smoothest, but it's fine. So why don't we move on to our next and final craft, which is this giant green egg. We are going to turn it into a dragon's egg with all of these plastic spoons. Now, again, it's nice to have them all pre-cut because it just makes it easier to work with, because then all you have to worry about is gluing them straight to the egg. Now, I kind of want to work around the opening because yes, I do still want this egg to be able to open and close like it is originally able to do. So we're just gonna go ahead and start gluing little spoons around kind of the border of the opening. And it actually looks a lot easier than it is because you can see there that I just put one glob of glue at the top of the egg, and then I started to move to put the next one on. But what you can kind of see is it's not really secure there at the end, so what I decided to do is put another dab of glue just on the bottom. And that's pretty much all you have to do. It's just kind of problem solving and kind of finding the right place to glue in the next kind of little spoon, because again, it's kind of much similar to some of the other crafts in the way that you're kind of having a puzzle and you just need to find where to put the next piece so that it kind of makes this whole nice pattern. And again, we kind of want it to look like dragon scales or kind of like mermaid scales, so we're just going to be layering the plastic spoons kind of like this. So again, just finding some nice places to put that glue, and I found what works best is either putting a dab of glue at the top and just some on the sides and at the bottom. That seems to be what works best, but again, it really depends on where you're placing the spoon. But pretty much the goal here is to have the spoons kind of overlapping to form that pattern, and you kind of just want to use the spoons that you have to kind of continue that pattern. It's almost kind of like working with bricks, but also kind of different. Like, you know, when you make a brick pattern, you have to kind of stack them in the right way to make the wall strong. It's kind of like that, but also a little bit different because you're just kind of stacking plastic spoons instead of bricks. But again, you want to make sure you're kind of overlapping them and kind of have like two on the side and then one on top to kind of create the right pattern. But again, you can really do this however you want, just the goal is to glue the plastic spoons onto whatever you're gluing, because again, you don't necessarily have to do this with a dragon egg if you don't want to. Like, let's say you want to maybe create this pattern on a jar, you can totally do that. Basically, you don't necessarily have to make a dragon's egg. That's just kind of what came to mind. But I do think this pattern and how this looks is pretty cool, and again, it's not too difficult, just gluing the plastic spoons onto your surface. However, it is kind of a little bit difficult, especially with the egg, just when you get to the top and some of the curves, it can be a little bit more frustrating. However, if you just keep at it, it does eventually just work out, so don't worry about it too much, just kind of trust the process. And honestly, I don't really think there's a way to make this look bad. Like, again, it does not have to look perfect. That's not really what art or anything is about. It's just about kind of using what you have around you or trying to make something. Like, it never needs to look perfect. Plus, if it did, it wouldn't reflect the human up behind it, which is one of the most interesting things about art. What I love most about my crafts is that you can almost tell that they were made by me, like they're almost a reflection of me. So yeah, don't be afraid if it doesn't turn out exactly how you want it to. Like, I will say, although the egg does look really good and I am pretty happy with it, it's not my favorite. Like, look at it, it's good. However, it doesn't close fully, which is something I really wanted it to work, but unfortunately it just didn't work. But overall, I'm still really happy with it, and I think I shouldn't get caught up on the little details, and neither should you if you try this craft or any others. So yeah, no. Definitely not perfect. There are some hot glue stains, and also at the top it's not the smoothest, but apart from that, I am still very happy with it. And if I would do something differently, I just would have been a little bit more careful with the hot glue, because you can kind of see there are just some like little strings and stuff around, but I can easily get those off, so it's not that big of a deal. But it does kind of bother me a little bit that it isn't able to close fully, no matter how hard you press on it, but from some angles it does look a little bit better than others. Like right there, you can see it looks a little bit more closed. So all in all, definitely not perfect, but I'm definitely happy with it. But you know what? When I open it up, it almost kind of looks empty. So maybe I could try and find something to put in there. Like, I don't know. I just feel like maybe if I put this little guy in here, it would look a lot more lively. We just gotta kind of give him a nice little squish so that he fits in there. But look at him. He's kind of happy. Like, he's kind of vibing in there. Like, look at him. And honestly, it kind of looks like he's hatching and like he's some dragon or some sort of creature. And I'm honestly so here for that. Like, honestly, I think with the little plushie inside, it looks a lot better, especially because you can't tell that the opening is so rough. But yeah, no, all in all, very happy have with this. So let's go take a look at some of the other stuff we made.
Okay, so as you can see, I have put some of the lovely little Clover plastic spoon things on the bulletin board. One there and there, so on both sides of me. And honestly, from far away, they look quite a bit more like Clovers than they did close up, so I'm honestly really happy with them. So why don't we just take a final look at some of the other things we did today. So here we have one of the flowers. Again, it's so cute. I love the gold detailing I did on it. Honestly, probably one of my favorites that I did today. But my absolute favorite from today has to be this one. It's so pretty, and I don't even have the words for it. It's just stunning. And then we also have this one and the other one, which was quite a bit bigger, but these ones are kind of a bit harder to see on camera. Overall, still very pretty though. And finally, we have our little egg with the little dude inside of it. Honestly, I think he looks pretty cool. He looks kind of like he's hatching, and he looks very kind of stupid and silly, and I just love him. So yeah, honestly, I am so happy with what we did today with all the plastic spoons, but I have quite a few left over, and by quite a few, I mean, I had some pink spoons that I didn't even touch, same with the gold ones, and I have some leftover bits of the spoons, and there's just so much more I could do. And I actually have quite a few more ideas for some crafts that we could do with them, but I'll only do that if you want a part 2. So let me know what you think in the comments. Tell me if you want a part 2, and if you're interested, this wouldn't necessarily be in a part 2, but we could turn this huge egg into a dragon egg. But again, that would take a lot of spoons because this thing is bigger than my head. So I'll only turn this bad boy into a huge dragon egg if you guys want to. And because only doing that would be kind of boring, maybe we can make something to put into it as well, like a little dragon or something. We could figure that out. But I have been kind of wanting to make some plushies and stuff, so we could definitely do that. But anyways, let me know what you think of those ideas, and I will see you next time, hopefully for part 2, because honestly, again, the next few crafts that I can do with plastic spoons don't involve as much fire, so they're less dangerous and more suited for everyone. So yeah, let me know if you enjoyed this video. I hope you did, and I hope you have a wonderful day. See you next time. Bye!